Hello, my name is Charlie Herman and welcome back to Charlie's Cruise Tips and Reviews. So today's video will be my review on Independence of the Seas from Royal Caribbean, my most recent cruise, which I just got back from yesterday. I was supposed to get back Sunday afternoon, but because of flight delays and cancellations in Miami, I didn't get back till yesterday morning here in New York and back to my apartment till yesterday afternoon. So I was a bit tired yesterday. Didn't get a chance to do the review last night, so I'm doing it right now. So here we go. I'm gonna be as nice as I possibly can, but I'm gonna be honest. This was not the best cruise ship I have ever been on, or one of the better cruises I have been on. But I'm gonna get into all that. So, as I first just said, I was on Royal Caribbean Independence of the Seas 7-day Western Caribbean itinerary out of Miami. I'm not going to go into the ports of call other than Coco Key, which is their own private island in the Caribbean. We did go to Coco Key. We went to Grand Cayman and Cozumel. When I got off the ship in Grand Cayman and Cozumel, I did what I always did in Grand Cayman. I did an excursion and then walked around, got a couple of drinks, and went back to the ship. Cozumel, I did the same thing. I walked downtown, took some pictures, got a couple of T-shirts, did some duty-free shopping, ended up in Senior Frogs, and went back to the ship. So that takes care of the ports because anyone who's watched my videos before knows I've been to those courts before, so I don't need to go into the whole detail how those courts were. They were as good as they always were, and I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so here we go. Royal Caribbean Independence of the Seas. I wasn't a big fan of this ship, and to be honest, I found out the hard way that if you're traveling solo on Royal Caribbean, they don't have a lot of solo activities for you. As a matter of fact, they had a solo travelers meeting every night, but it was self-led at the Champagne Bar, and almost every night that I did go, I was the only one there. So when I did go, I happened to be the only one there, and it was not led by the staff like they do on NCL. There was no letting anyone know except in your daily planner if you happen to see it or look at it that there was a solo travelers gathering that night. So unless you were really looking for it, you if you were going solo, you really didn't know if there was anything going on or not. So that was one of the things I didn't like about this cruise is that as a there wasn't a lot of stuff to do as a solo traveler to begin with, and they really didn't help you out as a solo traveler. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the ship itself. It was an older ship, and I have been on ships that are older and the same size as this. I've been on Carnival Magic is about the same age ship and same size. Norwegian Breakaway and Getaway are close to the same size, not as the same size, but maybe a little bit bigger, maybe about the same size, give or take on that one a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. I have to check the math on that one, but I'm getting off topic here, but as I said, I've been on ships that's a bit older and the same size before, and to be honest, I really thought everything was a bit bunched in together. It was not more spread apart or um, like everything was just jumbled, junk put in together without what's the word I'm looking for? Without it not everything was just bunched together. It wasn't as spread out or as open as other cruise ships where it just felt very, very enclosed. For example, the Royal Promenade, that they basically put all the duty free shops, bars, and specialty places like the ice cream, the coffee, Sorrento's for ice cream, all in one place. While on other cruise lines, it's more spread out. Like you have the duty free shops in one place, and then you have bars, restaurants on the other side, or they would spread it. Like on one deck, you would have this, one deck, you would have to do this, one deck, you would have here. Another thing the ship did not have, which I still can't believe, which other cruise lines I've been on, it did not have an atrium. Almost every cruise ship I've had has a wide open atrium. This ship did not have any type of atrium whatsoever. The most wide open spaces there were on this ship, to be honest, was the pool deck and a couple of the inside bars, such as the Schooner Bar, which was the piano bar, Boleros, which had a dance floor, the Champagne Bar, which was a bit larger. But other than that, the other bars They were just your regular cruise ship bars. They weren't that open. There weren't a lot. Like Allen Anchor was a pretty decent size. Vintages looked to be a pretty decent size. I didn't go in there except for once. It that was it was like a regular size bar you would see on the cruise ship, but the ones that are usually in the bigger, wide open areas, there were not too many wide open areas on this ship. Everything was kind of just bunched in and cramped together. And like I said, on other ships I've been on this size, other cruise lines, it just tends to be more open, more space, more spaced out, and more space just to sit around and relax and everything. Other than those 3 or 4 lounges I mentioned, everything was kind of bunched in together. Same at the Solarium. The Solarium, which is the adults only area on board, it's one of the few adults only areas on board a ship I've been into that's an enclosed environment. I don't mean enclosed, but it's smaller. It's a certain part of the ship. It's not in either at one end of the ship where like at the end of the ship or at the front of the ship. It's literally right in the middle in between the pool deck and then when you go inside a couple of rooms as well as the and if you go up one floor the fitness center. So it was kind of in between some staterooms and the pool deck, and it wasn't as wide open. It was a bit more closed. Like it was open, but on the sides they had a lot more undercover space than you would normally have an adults only area. They're usually wide open. They're not. You don't have lots of covering. They're usually at the end of the ship or the front of the ship where there's a lot more space. So that area tended, unless you were in one of the chairs that was sitting in the shade under the overhang from the deck above, there weren't a lot of pool chairs in the sun or in the open area by the pool, which if you didn't get out there immediately first thing in the morning, you were either sitting under the cover, under the overhang, or you had to find another area on the ship to sit in the sun. So that's another thing I didn't like about the solarium on this ship because I thought it was a bit smaller. Actually, it was smaller than most of the adult only areas I've been on cruise ships. As I was talking about the Royal Promenade before, it was very crowded. Like I said, you had the duty free shops spread out over there. You had the Sorrento's Pizza on one side. You had a couple of bars on the other side. You had the specialty ice cream place. You had the champagne bar at the one end of the Royal Promenade, and all the way at the other end was the entrance. You had the dining room at one end, and you had the Royal Theater at the other end. So it didn't even take up a whole deck like you do have on other cruise ship, where it makes up most of the deck, if not the whole deck, which is the main area of the ship. They didn't even have that. It was like pretty much 2/3 of a deck or half a deck. So it made when you had certain events there, like the Duke's Entertainment, like one of the bands that would play there, it got very crowded. If you had like any activity going on there, it made it very hard to walk around, very crowded, especially at night. If it was one of those nights where they didn't have that much entertainment, so everyone would be on the Royal Promenade certain times at night. So it was kind of crowded, and I thought it could have been a little bit better. Okay, there we go. I'm going to start talking about the crew. The crew on board was wonderful. I'm going to give a couple of shout outs here, especially to Jeff and Voltaire at the Solarium Bar, which is the adults only area on board. The adults only area, they had a pool bar, which almost every cruise does in the adults area only area. They have a bar. So Jeff and Voltaire were great. They were friendly. They were wonderful. I gotta mention their names because he did such a great job, and it was busy there. Even though it was one of the smaller adult only areas, there it was busy, but I never waited more than 5 minutes to get a drink, which is unlike other cruise lines and adults only areas or other bars. I never, any bar I went to on this ship, I didn't wait more than 5 minutes for a drink. So that's one thing I can say is about the bartending staff did a regular job. Everyone was taken care of in a very timely manner. So that I will say, it's that the bartenders did a wonderful job. Another person I have to shout out to is my room steward Max. He was very nice, very friendly. Anything I needed, which I didn't need much, but if I did need anything, it was taken care of right away. I had an issue with my safe the first day. I saw him again the next day. I told him what happened. He's like, "Oh, I'll get someone." They had someone there right away. So once I went to guest services, and it was taken care of. So that I'll talk about. Guest services did a great job. I had an issue was taken care of within half an hour, 45 minutes. So they did do a good job. I met Captain Tor a couple of times. Very nice man. He was out and about around the ship, especially around the guest services area, around Royal Promenade. He was very nice. Took a picture with him. Obviously, he's been with the cruise line a very long time, and he was a just overall very nice guy. Um, However, as much as I did see the captain, the other members of the cruise director staff, I saw Marta a couple of times and a few others around the ship. I did not see the cruise director at all unless she was hosting a show or the quest, like the perfect couples game show, or the last comedy show of the cruise, the last night of the cruise, hosting the comedy show, or the quest. Other than that, I didn't see the cruise director once on board, not in passing, not at any of the activities, not even on the dress up a night because they didn't have any formal captain's dinner on board, which is kind of weird for the formal night on board, depending which cruise line you go on. That they didn't have a meeting group with the cruise director, the staff, any of the officers. So that was kind of weird. Another thing I really didn't like about this is that on the elegant night or dress up a night or formal night, whatever the cruise line you go on calls it. There was not a celebration like a party with the captain or like say a toast with the captain or a meet and greet with the officers. There was none of that. So that's kind of struck me as odd that on at least if on neither of the dress up nights that there was a meet up with the captain or cruise director or any of the officers on board. So that kind of surprised me because I'm used to, especially when they make such a big deal out of the formal nights that you get. They usually have those events with elite, if not the captain, with some of with the staff, with the officers, especially the cruise director and general manager. But they didn't have that, and I didn't get to meet them at all, other than the captain. So that's one thing I was surprised about. And like I said, I didn't that wasn't for me, that's something I'm just not used to. I'm used to seeing the cruise director out and about, getting a chance to talk with them, just chat, even if they're busy, they take a couple of minutes to say hi, how are you? I didn't see this cruise director once on board other than at the shows they were hosting. Okay, I'm going to talk about Coco Key now because this is the first time I was there. It is, and I'm going to say this, the nicest private island slash port I've ever been to. It is nicer than Great Stirrup Cay for NCL, for Norwegian Cruise Line, which is adjacent. Actually, the two islands are right next to each other. You can see NCL ships from Coco Key and from Great Stirrup Cay. You can see our Royal Caribbean ships at Coco Key. So they're really next to the two islands are next to each other. So, and I can tell you that this was nicer than Great Stirrup Cay. It's nicer than Harvest Cay in the Bahamas, which is NCL's private port. It's nicer than Mahogany Bay in Roatan Island, Honduras, which is Carnival's private cruise port there, which was built for Carnival. So this was the nicest out of all of it. It's nicer than um the one in Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. I first give me a second because there are two there. I forgot which one Carnival goes to that was built specifically for them, but it was nicer than that. The one thing I did like about this place compared to the other two other places that the pool is heated. So if you go in the adults only area, which I did, I bought I reserved a seat at the adults only area. The pool has a swim up bar, which I partook in. The pool is heated, so it's not like one of those freshwater pools where you get into and you have to get used to the water. It was warm, it was nice. I didn't go into the ocean at all on this one, but the water was beautiful. The island, it was beautiful. I had a good barbecue lunch. I had a burger, fries. It just was a really good experience. And the drink selection there, it was just like if you go to one of the other cruise ports and their private beaches, the same cruise drink selection you would if you went on board the ship. So I was really impressed with Coco Keys. So if I do choose to do Royal Caribbean again, I would like to make sure that Coco Key is on the itinerary, assuming it is a Caribbean itinerary. Okay. Um, the food and drink on board. Now, Royal Caribbean, I will say this, has a better beer selection than some other cruise lines I've been on, especially at the Ale and Anchor Bar. They had a really good beer selection, unlike the other bars where they had the same thing here. They had a few more options. I actually tried the Stella Dam beer, which is from Barcelona, Spain. That was really good. That's the first time I ever had that. They had Newcastle Brown Ale. They had Guinness. They had a bunch of different beers I've never seen before. So that was I got a chance to try some new beers there, and it was really good. They had uh, the Carib beer from Trinidad. That was really good. I've had that before, but I've never actually seen it on the cruise ship. This is the first time I've seen it on the cruise ship, so that was really nice. So I loved it. They had some really good specialty drinks on board, mixed drinks, frozen cocktails. So the drinks on board were phenomenal. So I will give them their credit for that one. They did have a really good drink selection. And unlike other cruise ships, like if you go to the wine bar, mojito bar, this bar, whatever, they were fully stocked with whatever drink you wanted. So if you wanted rum and coke, you could get any bar you wanted. If you wanted beer, you could get any bar you want. You didn't have to say, well, this is the wine bar. We don't have beer here. You got to go somewhere else for that. Or if you wanted rum and coke or this, that, whatever, we don't have it here. You have to go somewhere else. Every bar was stocked with beer. So no matter where you were, you could drink whatever you wanted. Especially if you wanted beer, you could get it wherever you wanted. Okay, so the food selection on board the ship was good. I'm gonna say that it was good, but I do think that the food is better on Carnival. Just not the menu itself. The menu was pretty good. It's just I thought the quality of the food, especially in the buffet, every day was almost the same thing. On other cruise lines, when you go to the buffet here was called the Windjammer Cafe. It's called Lido Marketplace on Carnival. It's called I forgot what it's called on NCL for a second. I'll remember that later. But I tend to think that the other cruise lines have a better selection, at least for lunch. For lunch and dinner, I think the other cruise lines have a better lunch. They have a better selection because any cruise line you go on for dinner, it's the same menu in a buffet for dinner that it would be in the main dining room. So for for lunch, I thought the buffet is better on other cruise lines. For breakfast, I actually think the buffet was better for breakfast than it was for lunch because they did have waffles every day. They had the traditional breakfast food, cereal, eggs, turkey, bacon. I mean, bacon, turkey sausage, regular sausages, etc. They had croissants, they had biscuits, they had waffles, which is my favorite. They had pancakes every day, which you don't always see every day or the same selection on other cruise lines. So I really do think they have a better breakfast selection on board than you do on other cruise lines in the buffet for breakfast. Um, Now, I only went to one specialty restaurant on board. I went to Azumi for hibachi. Now, I think it's better to go one of these places for lunch because you do get a lot of food, and if you're someone who's nibbling all day, it's not the best place to go for dinner because you do get a lot of food and you could fill up if you've been eating all day. They give you a lot of fried rice and a lot of things beforehand, like the super salad, the fried rice, so you can fill up quickly. I thought the food selection was good. They don't give you much of a choice for the hibachi for lunch. You can get two combination. I got the chicken and beef tenderloin now. Usually when you choose the steak or beef, they give you a choice of what kind of steak you want, like it's a New York strip or filet mignon or this. That was just a straight up beef tenderloin selection, which I took, and I think it was a filet mignon, but I wasn't sure. But it was a very good cut of meat. Your chicken was great. I got the chicken and beef combination. The miso soup was great. The fried rice was excellent. The only thing I'm going to say about this is that in Inzumi, the show was pretty good, but when with the hibachi chef and the show they put on as they do the cooking before the cooking, I thought the show is better on the other two cruise lines than on this one. I thought this show could have been a little bit better from the chef. The chef, I mean, he was very funny. He was very friendly. He's a great cook, but I thought the show could have been a little bit better. Okay, as far as the entertainment is concerned, this is what really got to me on board. So the piano part to Shinohara was good. He was really good, but the first couple of nights on board, at the first every other couple of nights, they had different people at the Shooter Bar, and one of them, all they did was actually play music. It wasn't a sing along. It was just they would play the songs. There was no singing. There was no singing along. It was just straight playing the piano. So the first couple of nights, I wasn't happy about that. But once you got later in the cruise, like after a second, third night, it was the same guy every night. It was a sing along. It was funny. It wasn't raunchy, but it was fun. It was fun and it was not crowded, but it was definitely a good amount of people there. It was an older crowd on board, so you knew it wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be raunchy. It wasn't going to be like when you go on other cruise lines where it's going to be a lot of dirty songs or R-rated songs. You knew you weren't going to get that on this ship, but it still was a lot of fun. You did get sneak Alice in there one night for the song, which if you know, everyone's like, Alice, who the F is Alex? Alice, he did play that one night. So that's the only dirty song I really heard on board. But other than that, he did a great job. It was a lot of fun. I did throw some money in the thing one night, and he did a wonderful job. Um, the other thing I wasn't thrilled about is that not only was normally the ship has at least two or three parties on board, and it's spread out throughout the cruise, like maybe one the second night, one a couple of nights later, then one the second to last night of cruise. This ship only had one party. It was the 80s party, and it was the second to last night of the cruise. And a lot of the things I wanted to partake in, like the perfect couple game, the marriage game, these shows were all later at night towards the end of the cruise. So instead of having some of these things, one at towards the beginning, one in the middle, one at the end, most of the things I really enjoyed doing were backloaded at the end of the cruise. The 80s party was the second to last in the cruise. Not only was it not really called the 80s party, it was called the 80s celebration. It wasn't even on deck. It was held in on the Royal Promenade. So to be honest, it wasn't outside. It was, as I said, with the Royal Promenade, if it gets busy there, it can be really crowded. It's hard to move around. There wasn't a lot of space, and once the party ended, you had to go either one way or the other way to get out of there because there's only two ways to get in and out of the Royal Promenade because of the way it is on that ship. It's and like I said, this ship doesn't have a lot of open spaces, so you had to choose one way or the other, and you could get stuck behind people. They still kept playing the music when the party ended, but the thing is, normally these parties last about an hour. I did get there about 10 minutes late. It started at 8:15. I got there about 8:26, give or take, 8:30. It was over by 8:45. Even the Daily Planner said 45 minutes, which meant it would have gone to 9 o'clock. It was over at 8:45. It literally lasted half an hour. Most of these parties are at least an hour and they're outdoors. This was indoors. It only lasted half an hour. So I don't know what happened there. But as I said, I've been to other parties on board. This was one. It was a fun party, but it was like one of the shortest parties I've ever been to. And if this is supposed to be the big party you have on board, it should at least be outdoors on deck and should be at least an hour. But that's just my opinion. Okay, the music on board was good, but and they had a couple of bands on board. Um, they were really good, but a couple of them they only played a certain type of music. One was a Caribbean band, so they played a lot of Caribbean tunes. The other one was a Latin band, and they played a lot Latin dance music, which I loved. I actually had really fun at that. But one of the things I noticed that when I'm on other cruise ships, when you have these bands, another thing, one night they play dance music, one night they play this type of music, one type they play this type of music, like maybe 80s music one night, 90s music one night, this type of music one night. These two bands played almost every night, but at the same time, they only played the same type of music in the same venues. So the venues didn't get switched up much, and it was only the same type of music. So it was not that much of an eclectic type of music on board. And I did enjoy the music. I did enjoy the dancing. But like I said, it would have been nice to have a little bit more variety on board. So pretty much in conclusion, I thought, as I said, it was an older ship. It was an older crowd on board. I did meet some nice people, but to be honest, like I said, there wasn't a lot of activities for solo travelers. Most of the stuff I like to do, like the 80s party and the game shows and everything, although most of them were backloaded towards the end of the cruise. As I said, I never saw the cruise director. The captain was very nice. Most of this, all of the staff I did meet on board were very nice, very helpful. I did mention a few staff members on board, but the overall, when I add it all up in conclusion, it just wasn't that great of a ship. It was an older ship. I thought it was a bit too. There weren't enough open spaces. I thought things were all bunched together, especially the activities, instead of spreading them out a little bit on board the ship. I thought the food could have been better. So I'm giving this cruise 6.5. Actually, I'll be nice. I'll give them a 7 out of 10 because the staff on board was so great. But between, I thought, the different, uh, the age of the ship, how things were so bunched together, there weren't a lot of late night activities. Like there was one each night instead of multiple each night. Certain shows were only played once a night. So if you wanted to go to it, if you weren't at dinner, then you could go. But if you were at dinner because of the my time and everything, oh, that's another thing I wanted to mention. We had the my time dinner dining a couple of nights. It got changed a couple of times because they lost their reservation and they had to change it. So a couple of times on board, we were at dinner at one time this night, then another night we were at dinner this night time, and then another night we were at this time. So it was a bit chaotic. So I forgot to mention that. But as I was saying, certain shows, if you were at dinner or if you were had something else that was going on that time of night, you couldn't really enjoy a lot of some of the entertainment they had because it was only off shown once the entire cruise and only once a night. So between everything, how things were so grouped together, the ship I thought was a bit older. The crowd on board was a bit older. I thought everything there could have been a lot more wide open. Everything was clumped together. Not a lot of wide open spaces except for a couple of places in the bar. So everything was very very crowded. I'm gonna give this cruise 6.5. I'll be nice, a 7 out of 10. I will try Royal Caribbean again. I don't think I would go on them solo again, and I will most definitely choose another ship, something a little bit newer, say like something in the Wonder class or Icon class, Oasis class, something a little bit bigger that has more amenities. So once again, in conclusion, as I said, it wasn't the best cruise I've been on. I'm giving going to be nice and give it a 7 out of 10, but I thought there was a lot of room for improvement for Royal Caribbean on this ship and this cruise. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again soon with another video as soon as I'm done putting it together. Have a great night, and remember, be a cruiser.